One, two, three, one. Not so low. Not so low. I'm gonna try to trim down a little bit.
And oh wow, Austin music is unbelievable. Absolutely. A lot of writers, a lot of wonderful bands. Where did you land? Yeah, where did you land after? Or did you remain in Austin?
No,
Oh! Oh my gosh! He must be very, very good. Oh. Here I'm thinking guy in his 20s going around to Austin. So is the classic Cowboys?
Okay. 3, 6, 8, 10. Go ahead. Yeah. I believe it. That makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah.
But it will reflect when it's reflected, certain colors are brought out and others. Because the light is covered.
It totally makes sense, right? It totally makes sense. It's beautiful. No more leaves. The tree last week had leaves. And this.
Green. It brings a lot of
Yeah. So maybe we don't need light.
How? Are we here?
With pleasure. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Glad that you're here. Another beautiful morning outside and in. And we're glad to be here with you this morning and to pray and to give thanks and to be together and to either take a breath or catch a breath or maybe share a breath, right? We know that that's our neshama, right? That our soul, where it rests, how it rests with us is in our breath and in our lower parts and throughout all of our parts, but that we breathe it in on Shabbat and we take a moment. And David, thank you. You were just, I don't know if you could hear, but David was just talking about the colors, what the lights that are reflected in this sanctuary, depending on the weather outside and perhaps inside, right? You noted what we see and what is seen. It's a good reminder. We start each Shabbat morning with the singing of Matovu, and that is the one that you've heard me say it before, that allows us to offer thanks for the space, the physical space, but the physical space is the container, and ours is a beautiful container and an extraordinary container. But it is what we each bring to that space to fill it, both individually while at the same time communally in prayer. So please, if you would, join us on page 192 for the singing of Matovu. Matovu, Matovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenatecha Yisrael, Matovu, Matovu, Page 194 as we continue. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher yatzar et ha'adam b'chokhmah u'v'ravo nikavim, chaluim. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who formed the human body with skill, creating the body's many pathways and openings. It is well known before your throne of glory that if one of them be wrongly opened or closed, it would be impossible to endure and stand before you. Blessed are you, Adonai, who heals all flesh, working wondrously. Baruch atah Adonai, rofeh kol basar umafli la'asot.
Elohai, Elohai, neshama, shenatata li tehorahi. Elohai, Elohai, neshama, shenatata li tehorahi. Ata berata, ata yitzarta, ata nefachta bi, v'ata meshamra b'krevi. Elohai, Elohai, neshama, shenatata bi tehorahi.
Baruch atah Adonai, asher b'yado nefesh kol chai, v'ruach kol basar ish. Let's continue with Nisim B'chol Yom with our prayers for our daily miracles on page 198. We continue responsively.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lan l'tzachvivina l'chavchin ben yom uben layla.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, pokeach ivrim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, metzir asurim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, zokef kefufim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, rokach haaretz al hamayim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamechi mitzadei gaver.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, al pi sharumim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hanoten la'ayef koach.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hama'avir shna me'inai u'dumami afatai.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, sha'asani b'tzelem Elohim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani bat chorim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, sha'asani Yisrael.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, osder Yisrael b'gvura.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, oter Yisrael b'tifara. Let's continue with the prayer for Torah study on page 204. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Elu devarim she'en lahem shi'ur. These are things that are limitless, of which a person enjoys the fruit of the world while the principle remains in the world to come. They are honoring one's father and mother, engaging in deeds of compassion, arriving early for study morning and evening, dealing graciously with guests, visiting the sick, providing for the wedding couple, accompanying the dead for burial, being devoted in prayer and making peace among people, but the study of Torah encompasses them all. We continue on page 218. Middle of page 223 as we continue praying together. You shall always be praised, great and holy God, our sovereign in heaven and on earth. Songs of praise and psalms of adoration become you, acknowledging your might and your dominion. Yours are strength and sovereignty, sanctity, grandeur, and glory always. We offer our devotion, open our hearts in acclamation. Baruch atah Adonai, El Melech Gadol Batishbachot, El HaHodaot, Adon HaNiflaot, Habocher B'Shirei Zimra, Melech El Chei Ha'olamim.
Yitgadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah.
Amen.
Ve'almad yivarach yirotei v'yamlich malchutei.
B'chayechonu v'yomechon, uv'chayedecho beit Yisrael, Bagala, Ubizman Karim, V'imeru. Amen.
Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach, le'olam olam me'armaya.
Yitbarach.
Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitrama v'yitnaseh v'yitodar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudashah. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata
Tushbechata v'nehemata damiran be'alma.
v'imeru.
Amen. In body, in spirit, as are able, we rise for our call to worship, the Baruch Hu.
Baruch hu et Adonai ha'mevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Creator of light and darkness, we say, Baruch Atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Yotzer or uvorei choshech, Oseh shalom uvorei et hakol, Hameir la'aretz v'ladarim aleha barachamim, Uvtuvo mechadesh bechol yom tamid ma'asev reishit. Marabu ma'asecha Adonai. Kulam b'chochma asita. Malah haaretz kinyanecha. Titbarach Adonai Eloheinu al shabach ma'aseh yadecha. Ve'al me'rei or she'asita yif'arucha sela. Or chadash al tzion ta'ir. V'nizkechu lanu mehera le'oro. Baruch atah Adonai yotzer hamerot. Love your neighbor as yourself, you said. And light-blinded, we saw that inner and outer worlds are one, as you are one. You spoke and we wrote. We reached for you down the centuries. Your light moving before us as we climbed, fell back, and climbed again. Your Sinai of life. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher be'amo Yisrael be'ahava.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem, Kevod Malchuto, Leolam Vaed.
Please be seated.
בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך ובטפתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
The eternal truth is that you alone are God and there is none else. Of all the nations, rejoice in your love and exult in your justice. Let them beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks.
Let a nation not lift up sword against nation, nor learn war anymore.
You shall not hate your brother or your sister in your heart.
Faith that so turns to you shall be accepted as your people, for you strangers in the land of Egypt.
Why do you crush my people and oppress the poor, asks God.
We know that the eternal one defends the poor and upholds the rights of the needy.
Praise to God Most High.
Me
Tzur Yisrael, Kuma Bezrat Yisrael, Ufidechenu Mecha Yehuda v'Yisrael, Go'alenu Adonai Tzevaot Shemo, Kadosh Yisrael, Baruch Ata Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. We continue as we rise as are able for our tefillah, which is on page 242.
Adonai Sefer Giftahu Via Giteilatecha.
Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise.
Baruch Ata Adonai
Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, El Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Dorim, V'Koneh HaKol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avot V'Imahot, U'Mevii Geulah Livnei B'neihem, L'ma'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch Ata Adonai, Magen Avraham V'Ezrat Sarah, Ata Gibor Adonai, Mechayeh Kol Ata, Rab Mashiach, Mashiv HaRuach U'Morid HaGashem, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechayeh HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Samech Noflim V'Rofei Cholim, U'Matir Asurim, U'Mekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar, Mi Chamocha Ba'al Gevurot, U'Mido Melach, Melech Memid U'Mechayeh, U'Matzmiach Yeshua, B'ne'eman V'Talach Hayot HaKol, Baruch Ata Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol.
נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, ופרץ את זה ואמר, קדוש קדוש קדוש,
Adonai Tzevaot,
מלוך הארץ, כבודו. אדיר אדירנו אדוני, אדוננו מאדיר שמך בארץ.
Baruch Kevod Adonai,
מן במו, אחד הוא אלוהינו,
Hu Avinu
מלכנו, ומושיענו והוא ישמיענו, ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם,
Yimloch Adonai Leolam, Elohai Tzion, Lidor Vador, Hallelujah.
לדור ודור נגיד עוד לך, ולנצח נצחים קרשתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ינוש, לעולם ועד.
Baruch Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. Please be seated. Page 250 as we continue.
ושמרו בני ישראל
את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם, ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם. has this week vanished? Is it lost forever? Will I ever recover anything from it? The joy of life, the unexpected victory, the realized hope, the task accomplished. Will I ever be able to banish the memory of pain, the sting of defeat, the heaviness of boredom? On this day, let me keep for a while what must drift away. On this day, let me be free of the burdens that must return. On this day, Shabbat, abide. Help me to withdraw for a while from the flight of time, contain the retreat of the hours and days from the grasp of frantic life. Let me learn to pause, if only for this day. Let me find peace on this day. Let me enter into a quiet world this day. On this day, Shabbat, abide. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu be'amcha Yisrael, u'tefilatam be'ahava tekabel, u'tehi l'ratzon tamid avodat Yisrael amecha. Baruch atah Adonai, she'odcha levadcha b'yirah na'avod. We acknowledge with thanks that you are Adonai, our God, and God of our ancestors forever. You are the rock of our lives and the shield of our salvation in every generation. Let us thank you and praise you for our lives which are in your hand, for our souls which are in your care, for your miracles that we experience every day, and for your wondrous deeds and favors at every time of day, evening, morning, and noon. O good one whose mercies never end, O compassionate one whose kindness never fails, we forever put our hope in you. For all these things, O sovereign, let your name be forever praised and blessed. O God, our Redeemer and Helper, let all who live affirm you and praise your name in truth. Blessed are you, Adonai, your name is goodness, and you are worthy of thanksgiving. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha u'lecha na'eh lehodot.
Sim shalom,
Tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim v'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol Yisrael amecha.
Barucheinu Yisraelu kolanu kechad, be'or panecha,
Ki be'or panecha natata lanu, Adonai Eloheinu. Sim shalom, tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim v'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol Yisrael amecha.
Torat chayim ve'achavat chesed, ve'achavat chesed, u'tzedakah u'bracha ve'rachamim, ve'chayim ve'shalom. Sim shalom, tova
uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim v'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol Yisrael amecha.
וטוב יהיה לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך.
Sim shalom, tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim v'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol Yisrael amecha. We say Baruch atah Adonai, hamivarech et amo Yisrael b'shalom. We take a few moments now, we pause, we pray, we meditate in silence.
Yul Ratzon, written by contemporary songwriter Michelle Citrin. It's very simple melody. We'll sing on La 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 first, and then join me when you feel comfortable, and then we'll put the words in. Ya la 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 la, ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la 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 la. Try with me. Ya la la ya la la ya la la ya la 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 ya la la ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 la. Once again. Ya la la ya la la ya la la ya la 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 ya 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 la 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 la. Iul ratzon imrefi vegion libi. Iul ratzon imrefi libi lefanecha. Iul ratzon imrefi vegion libi. Iul ratzon imrefi libi lefanecha. Ya la la ya la la ya la la ya la 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 ya la la ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 la.
The beautiful melody that the cantor just offered us matches perfectly with the words, "May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, Adonai, my rock and my redeemer." Good to have words and music that go together to remind us why we join together. We turn our hearts, our thoughts, our prayers, our songs, our silence, and our energies towards those who are ailing right now, those who for weakness of body, weakness of spirit, those who are stretched too thin are struggling right now. And we say, Mishaberach Avotenu v'Imotenu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah Hu Yivarech et Acholim. May the one who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and give strength to all of those who are struggling. This Shabbat, we're holding in prayer Barb DeCario, Thomas DiMatteo, Mark Friedman, Elizabeth Friedman, Ira Coleman, Dorothy Jacobson, Shana Esther Bat Ruchel, Howard Itkin, Chris Sura, Joel Shemaskin, Chaya Necha Bat Rivalea, Simon Brightman, Barbara Baer, Chuck Frame, Beata Falkovich, Lawrence Post, Katriel Parachia Ben Herschel Laser Vishoshana, Richard Reese, Marlene Gordon, Davida Beer, Michael Weistrich, Scott Rosenfeld, Lillian Cortot, Sally Graff, and Sam Webby. If there are others whom you would add to this list or names that are better spoken by you, please, as I look your way, would you share that name with us? May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them renewal of body and of spirit, and let us join together in saying, Amen. Page 371.
Mi Sheberach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misheberach imotenu mekor habracha leavotenu. Bless us in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Our bodies are spirits. Our community is strengthened, is nurtured, is soothed at times by the words of our Torah. Sometimes they agitate, sometimes they calm, sometimes they inspire. I'm curious to know what you will think about today's reading. For those of you who are on the Minion Makers email list, which I think is most of you as I look around, and if you're not, be in touch with Ellen afterwards. We're gonna do a little reading of a portion that is familiar to you. But before you take out your Chumash and our eager bunnies, I see all of you. Who knows our Parsha this week? It's so good, by the way. We're right at the very beginning of Genesis, so we're one portion in. That's your hint. Who knows where we are? You get like an extra gold star at the Oneg today, if you can. Who knows where we are? What's our Parsha? Who knows what special little critters we had here last night? For what portion? Noah, right? Noah. So, if I were to ask you before opening your Chumash, your Torah commentary, to tell me the story of Noah, what would you say? You stitch it together for me. What's the story of Noah about? There was a flood. What happened before the flood? People were bad, right? Call them, I think the Talmudic term is stinkers, right? They were behaving poorly, very poorly. And then what? There's a little gap between people who were behaving poorly and the flood. You're missing a couple of details in there.
One man was good in his time.
One man was good in his time. Who's that? Noah. What's the term for that in Hebrew? What in English? What's the translation of it? He was considered a righteous man in his generation, right? Which means in comparison to all the other bad, the nudniks, the stinkers, those who were doing wrong, he was considered fairly decent. So there's a kind of relativity, thank you, to who and how Noah was in his generation up against the others who were behaving poorly. So there was this guy, Noah, we know, and what else happened between the transgressing and the flood? There was building, who said build an ark? Yeah, God, right? And what did God say? Do it like this and do it like that and have this and have that, and right? Right. The plan was quite detailed, right? A lot. The words specificity definitely apply to God's instructions for the ark. And what else did God say in beyond the construct of the ark? Right. Gather two of all the animals. In particular, what should be noteworthy about those two? Right? They should, male and female they should be, so that they could repopulate the animal kingdom thereafter. Yeah, what else? What else?
be more kosher animals.
There should what?
More kosher animals.
There should be more kosher animals, right? Did we have kashrut then? Not, right? We didn't have it yet, right? It's kind of a reading back into the text, which we do a lot. We're good at that, right? So we talk about those who are fit and those who are unfit, those animals that should and shouldn't be on the ark. Who else should Noah bring on the ark? Is it just him and the animals? His family in particular. Who from his family? His sons and their wives.
Because they're going to populate the earth.
Right? Kind of like the animals, some parallelism there, right? Who else should Noah bring? Maybe,
Not his wife, his daughters and their husbands.
right? Did he have daughters?
I don't know,
Did Noah have daughters?
not mentioned.
Yeah, not mentioned. Did Noah have any other women in his life? He sure did. He had a wife. And what was her name? We don't know. And what were his daughters-in-law? What were their names? We sure don't know, right? And is that unusual in Torah text? It sure isn't, right? Do his sons have names? Yeah, anybody know their names? Ham. So unfortunate, right? Yeah, what else? Yeah. And what? And Japheth, right? How do we pronounce it with a J or a Y, right? Japheth, right? No J in Hebrew, right? So we know their names, and we know Noah's name, but we don't know his wife's name, and we don't know the names of his daughters-in-law, and I just say, right? Pardon me? Did they say, spoiler alert, we're going to read it. We're going to read it. Okay, right? So interesting, right? For those of you who are taking the Midrash class on Sunday mornings, the adult ed class, that's actually what Midrash attempts to fill in those gaps, right? Like for sure Noah's wife and his daughters-in-law had names. For sure they were noteworthy. For sure they were a part of this enormous, significant journey that he was going to be taking, where the flood wasn't just like, the terrible rains that we have seen lately. What was the flood intended to do? Wipe it out, right? God said, I'm so disgusted that we're going to start again. I'm going to start again, except for this bunch that have been allocated to the ark, right? Right? Have I missed anything so far in the story? Any yeah?
All the creatures in the sea lived.
That's a couple steps ahead. Say it again.
All the creatures of the sea.
Right? Everything underwater was safe, right? Kind of stands to reason, right? Glad to know that that's a piece that's also mentioned, right? Because otherwise there's an inconsistency in the text, and often there are inconsistencies in the text, right? Anything else at all that we missed so far? No? So this story, tell me how many of you had nurseries or had books or ran classes or did art projects or sang songs about Noah's Ark? How many of you had blankets in your homes for your kids or books or, right, Noah's Ark? How many of your kids could sing about the animals coming in 2 by 2, right? It's not really a happy story, right? It's really, we've taken the imagery, and we do this as well, we've taken the imagery of this seemingly child-friendly story, but it's really an adult story. It's really about divine retribution and punishment and anger. And we've made it very pretty. And we've talked about the rainbow, and it's so beautiful. And right, a couple weeks ago when there was that amazing double rainbow in town, right? Some of you saw it. People were like, see, it's so good. It's so beautiful about that. What do we know about the rainbow? What was the rainbow? The rainbow factors into this story as well. Say it again, Ellen? Yeah.
And I just have to comment that the ark and all that imagery is on the naming certificates that we give to
Sure is.
babies at Temple Sinai.
Beautiful little certificates with a Noah's Ark and a rainbow stretching over this big fold-out. Yeah, right. We've signed a whole bunch of them. Right. It's so cute and happy and colorful and squishy and destructive and awful and right. Not what we hope and pray for our children. Right.
Conception about that rainbow and who it was for.
Right. What's the rainbow? Right. What does the rainbow? How does the rainbow inform us at the end of towards the end of the Noah story, Shelley? Commitment. Give us some subjects.
And the people that he'll never do that. It will never happen again.
Right. So in fact, what does, and then we'll get to the text, what does God say by way of the rainbow?
That first of all, the rains have stopped.
Right.
And it's time for you to get moving.
Right. right? And even, yes, and then there's one step beyond that, right? So it symbolizes some dry land. So does so do the birds that go out and look for dry land, right? One of them ultimately with the olive branch, the dove, that story as well. Some debate about the kinds of birds that those were, right? But what is that rainbow supposed to symbolize? A covenant, right? A brit, a pact, a promise that God says what to the people? I will not do that again. I will not do that again. You keep up your end of the bargain, I'll keep up my end of the bargain, right? Let's be in relationship with one another. It's not always going to be perfect, says God to Noah. And by way of this rainbow, I'm going to show you that, right? That's on the pshat level, on the surface level, right? What we talk about, right? That's when we look right across the base of the story, the simplest level, that's what we say, right? That this is God saying, in fact, our commentators say, I was too heavy-handed. God says I shouldn't have done that, right? Now we're going to read something, and then I have some questions for you. We're going to read the text. Let's say that the bracha. You'll find the portion itself on page, I think it's 59. Hold on. Did it start on 59? Yeah, page 59 of your Torah commentary. You will find the beginning of Noach. And after we say the bracha of your, we're going to read a chunk of the story. And then I'd love to hear some more of the gaps maybe that we missed or your thoughts that we missed. So if you would flip to the back of your book, please.
Isn't this like the new Adam and Eve story, but without Eve's not mentioned?
Tell us why can you hear it? So it's like a reset?
Yeah, you say everything's been destroyed. You have Adam and Eve, who we don't know, Noah and whoever friends who are.
Noah and his nameless people, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're starting all over. The animals, it's everything is beginning again.
So did we have a
The land was covered, so there's no land.
right? Did we have a redo in the Garden of Eden story? Did it start again? Did God say I'm going to wipe it out and start again?
That's in essence what it sounds like.
But Noah, the story of Noah is an undoing of creation. It's almost the same steps opposite of creation.
Go ahead. Can everybody hear? Yeah, go ahead.
So everything is in the exact opposite order. So we get back to not to let there be light, but to day 2, where God said, separate the water from the water. And when all the stuff came, the Noah portion says that the water came down from the sky, but it also came up from the ground. Till, if you look at it coming back together, then there's this little arc in the middle, and it didn't go. And God looked and went,
Right.
It's uncreating.
Right, right. Like it's like deconstructing, right? Deconstructing. So we have, right, interestingly, and we have probably 10 generations between Adam and Eve to Noah, and then another 10 generations, by the way, from pivotal Noah to Abram or Abraham, right? That's where we'll be next week. We jump quite far ahead. So interesting to see what we have learned and not learned, what God has thought about and has reconfigured within those, within those generations. Let's see, after we read a little chunk, if you're still thinking the same thing and if it fits together the way you're imagining it. So you'll find the bracha on page 1602, and then does somebody want to start reading Noah right after the bracha? We're going to start right at the beginning. Ellen, do you want to read? Are you okay to read? Okay. Baruch hu et Adonai hamvorach. Baruch Adonai hamvorach leolam vaed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim. Venatan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
This is Noah's chronicle. Noah was a righteous man. In his generation, he was above reproach. Noah walked with God. Noah begot 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The earth became corrupt before God. The earth was filled with violence. And when God saw how corrupted the earth was, how all flesh was acting in a corrupt way upon the earth, God said to Noah, "The end of all flesh has come to mind before me. Because the earth is full of violence on their account, look, now I am going to wipe them off the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make the ark with rooms, and cover it with tar inside and out. This is how to make it. 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. Make a roof for the ark, making it overhang from the above by a cubit. Put the ark's door in its side, and make a bottom, a second, and a third deck. As for me, I am going to bring the flood waters upon the earth to destroy all that lives under the heavens, all that has the breath of life in it. Everything on earth shall expire. With you, though, I will establish my covenant. Go then into the ark, you, your wife, your sons, and their wives with you, and take 2 each of every living creature of all flesh into the ark, male and female, to keep them alive along with you. Every type of bird, every type of beast, every type of creeping thing, let 2 of each come to you to keep them alive. And take along edible foodstuffs of every kind. Gather them up so that there is food for yourself and for them. And Noah did just as God had commanded him. That is what he did. You want more?
A little bit, yeah, just to the end of that.
The Eternal One then said to Noah, Go into the ark with all your household, for I see that you alone in this age are righteous before me. Take 7 pairs of every pure beast, male and its mate, and 2 of every impure beast, a male of its mate. Of the birds of the sky, 2, take 7 pairs, male and female, to give life to offspring on the face of the earth. For in another 7 days I will pour rain upon the earth for 40 days and nights, and wipe all that exists, all that I have made, off the face of the earth. Noah then did just as the Eternal had commanded him.
Thank you, thank you. What do you notice? What caught your attention in this passage?
What catches my attention in this passage is that he blames everything on it.
Who's he?
God.
Uh-huh.
Okay? The animals also.
Mhm.
Also, there's no mention of fish.
No mention of fish, no mention of bringing them on? Right, where would they be, right?
What he says he's going to wipe out every living thing on the earth. They're dead.
Well, are they living on the earth?
Well, I guess that's...
We could split some hairs, right? Right, it's your point, right? They were living...
But what is the corruption of animals? Why is he wiping them all out?
And furthermore, what's a pure animal? How do we understand that? Without blemish, in particular, yes. In particular, for what purpose? Right, those that would be fit for sacrifice, right? That is the designation that we're talking about, right? Would they be okay, acceptable, right? You have to give your best, your finest, your choicest, without blemish for sacrifice, right? Right. What else do you notice? Pardon me?
Why are there only 7 pairs?
Right? Why 7 pairs? Where'd that number come from? Now, what might we guess? Why is 7 maybe a number? Where maybe it's a hearkening back to the parsha before, right, to creation. How do we know how many kinds of animals there were on the earth at that time? We don't know. What do you notice, if anything, missing?
Insects.
Pardon me?
No insects.
No insects? Thank you, it's a good point. I wasn't even asking in particular about the animals, but what else do you notice missing? Duly noted, yeah. Gail?
Well, I was going to say, I think insects might be the creepy crawly things, but first I thought that the plants and trees were missing, but there is mention of the edible food stuff.
Right.
I'm imagining.
Right. So so plant life at first seemed missing, but is in fact there. Yeah? Yeah. Anything else that you notice missing?
I have a different question.
Please.
I'm going to be revealing my ignorance. So the commandments were given to Moses, who brought them to the people. Those were
Pretty detailed,
regs.
yeah.
Those were rules.
At least Mel Brooks thought so, right? Right, yeah.
So all of these horrible people, except for Noah, who lived around him,
Right.
I mean, what were they accused of? What did they?
It's such a good question. It's not ignorant at all. In fact, it was the exact same question that came up this morning when we were studying Jeremiah. What was so awful? What was their crime, right? We didn't have those commandments yet. We didn't have those yet, right? Or did we? We didn't have them formally in our book, right? We know that, right? We didn't have them yet. kind of in quotes. We didn't have them yet. What was so egregious, what was so heinous, that God wasn't just angry. God didn't say, I'm going to wipe out your town. God said, I'm going to wipe out everything and everybody and every living thing in all places and start new. What was it that was? Our commentators asked the same question, right? What else do you notice? Yeah.
The people, he wanted to wipe them out because of their violence, but that was a pretty violent act.
Right. Don't teach your kid to not hit by smacking them. Right? That was kind of the old adage, right? That was right. You don't teach what not to do by doing it. Right? What kind of God is it setting up for us? Also, we saw in Jeremiah this morning a very angry, punitive, violent God. Right?
You know, I sort of visualize is a kid playing with his toys and having a tantrum and going, shining like how it's doing, and go,
Right.
and I'll set it up.
Right. Exactly, right? It's exactly it, right? Conspicuously missing? Noah's response. There isn't any dialogue. Noah doesn't say, okay, why me? What did they do that was so bad? Why am I being spared? Why is my family chosen to be spared? What's going to happen after this? Don't do it, right? Like nothing, right? Like there isn't anything that Noah says, right? What would you want Noah to say?
Why me?
Right? Most of our prophets, by the way, most of our leaders say to God when God gives the tap, no thanks. Could you pick some? Most of them are reluctant. Could you pick somebody else, right? Noah goes and he builds the ark and he takes all the animals and right. Lots of thoughts about that as well.
So
Right?
people in this family just do the whole thing. You have to say yourself, it says.
Right? Was it survival of the fittest and he was thankful that God, kind of gave him the divine tap? Yeah, Ellen?
If you look at this beginning through the eyes of child development, and you have little kids in the Garden of Eden who don't even know that they don't have clothes on, and then you go to the next level of child development of toddlers to like age 4, emotionally. Kids age 2 to 4, when they're told to do something or admonished, they don't say, why me? I have a different opinion. They put their head down and they just don't look at you, because if they think it's true, in childhood development, you see children do that, and then you see vestiges of it in teenagers where they know they're guilty, they kind of look where they hide their head, because if they can't see you, you can't see them in their brains.
Right.
So from the child development of being guilty or feeling guilty, this is the next stage after little children in the garden. They wouldn't actually come back at you. They just go, oh yeah, you want me to like get my blanket and go upstairs? Okay. And they don't come back at you. But when we get to Abraham and he starts arguing with God.
About Sodom and Gomorrah, right? That's what yeah.
And that's another stage of I'm prepubescent and I'm gonna challenge you.
Right.
So you have to look a little bit, as this is before logic.
Right.
And that things are just violence. And yes, it's a temper tantrum, and yes, it's a meltdown on God's behalf also. But
developmentally appropriate as a people, right? I think is what you're getting to, right? Developmentally appropriate perhaps as a people. And we should point out, we're not a people yet. Is Noah Jewish? He sure isn't. Right? Right? Abram is the first, Abraham, right? That's where we first have our first, kind of Jewish, as we know it, Jewish people. Noah isn't. So this is really, really early on.
There's also no understandable rules on the behalf of the people.
No articulated, right?
No articulated rules, and yet when you say, what do the animals do? They were actually instinctually the models of violence. When animals, the fight or flight thing is in kids too, developmentally on that stage.
Right. I'm going to come around. There are some hands here. Yeah, Marilyn.
Yeah. Isn't the flood story an ancient its roots?
Yes, we have parallel flood stories. Absolutely, there are parallel flood stories of total.
Part of the mythology
Right.
of the time.
Right, and so interesting that you bring that up. That's actually what was our conversation earlier this morning as well, kind of putting a theological overlay to historical moments, right? Trying to understand what was happening historically, in this case in our creation cycle, what was happening at the time kind of on a geopolitical level, right, on a meta level, and then understanding it through a Jewish lens. Does it work? We think so, or it's a lens that allows us to make some sense out of something that is so huge, right? So it's one lens that might in fact help us. Other monumental flood stories happening at the same time. Yes, yeah.
Is there a parallel here to Abraham when he was told to sacrifice his son? Does he say?
Right. What happens in the Akedah when God says, "Bring your son, your only son," right? And right, what happens? Right? Where's the dialogue there? Where's the dialogue from Sarah, his wife, while he's rounding up his big kid? Why isn't Sarah reeling? Does she know? Right? This is by the way, these are all the questions that Midrash aspires to address. Yeah, there was another hand. Jerry, did you want? Yeah? No? Please.
I don't know, maybe it.
Oh, Arlene, are you?
It's all right.
Okay, Arlene, and then we'll come here. Okay, go ahead.
Maybe the whole story is just the cleansing. In other words, from creation, God and Adam and Eve and the biting of the apple and the devil coming through, maybe God said, okay, go out in this world, let me see how you do. So everyone went out in this world and some were good and some were not good. And he watched this and he watched the evil still taking hold and he said, I'm done with this, I want to cleanse it. So he found the purity within Noah's family and said, Noah's family, you'll go on the ark. The rest of the world will stay, and I'll bring the animals and everything else I created 2 by 2 and we start all over. That's how I see it.
So it kind of begs two questions. One, Noah and his wife were done having children, we can imagine, at that time, right? Why them? Why not just his sons and their daughters-in-law to repopulate the earth is one question. My bigger question is, are people, rhetorical, are people okay with a God who says, people have been so awful that I'm just gonna, kind of wash my hands of it and start again, right? That's not a God that I find comfort or meaning in, right? But certainly the God of our early developmental times as we were figuring out how and who to be. And God, we think of an omnipotent, an omniscient God, right? An all-powerful and all-knowing God. Well, God was figuring out, hard to imagine, but God was figuring out how to be in relation to us, we humans, who don't just err, but who screw up royally, right? Is what God is also addressing in this parsha. Herb and then Carol, yeah.
What strikes me about this is that there's no warning.
Right.
There's no recognition from God that you're doing something wrong.
Right.
Now, there were rules though.
Sorry.
Okay. No, you're not supposed to murder people.
Right.
You're not supposed to eat the apple. You're thrown out of the garden to
Right.
eat. So there were a set of rules set down. But it appears to me that what happened is, and this is the big line for me, okay? Noah was a righteous man. Well, how do you determine what a righteous man is unless God set down a set of rules?
Right.
So you had an earth full of people who had no rules to abide by, who maybe didn't even acknowledge God any longer because maybe he distanced himself.
Right.
God doesn't come and say, wait a second, guys, something's wrong here,
Right.
and he just wipes them out.
Right.
So what's that about?
Right. And a conversation, I'm sorry to keep hearkening back, it was a rich conversation this morning. That was a conversation this morning as well. It's seemingly arbitrary, right? If you come to this line, you're okay. If you put one toe over it, total destruction, right? Same in Jeremiah. It's the same thing that God says to the Babylonians, same. Okay that you did X and Y and that I used you to do X and Y, but if you do Z, done for. And do the Babylonians know what Z is? Right, that's the same. It's the same. Was it right? Very, very difficult to work on. So Carol, and then I'll come to each of you, Janet and Shelley. Go ahead.
Do we have any idea what role the person who wrote this, how much of an impact they had in what's written here? Their thoughts,
right,
at the time they lived,
right,
how they made the story work
Right,
what they
right.
put in it.
Right, how are they looking back at the story and making sense of it, kind of in a historical way?
Historical way.
In a faith-based way, right? In a theological way, how were they kind of twinning those two moments, those two experiences to make sense of them? However, right, and for each of us, it's different how we understand who both wrote the Bible and who was the redactor, right? Who was the editor who put it all together? Right? Janet and then Shelley.
It just occurred to me, this whole business of God didn't set out rules. But this, I was thinking, we sort of know intuitively about what's right and wrong. It seems to me, I mean, people who don't believe in a God
Right.
say we can be moral without rules from God.
I don't think cavemen thought common sense.
Morality is a
Right.
construct.
Right.
It's a social construct as well as everything else. What's moral to us that are here, I'm sorry, I started speaking, may not be to any other people.
Right. What we deem to be normative and socially accepted, right? Our social mores and norms are specific, right? They're specific to a culture,
The
right?
way that you brought up rules, and I kept on having a flashback to one of my college.
Just speak a little bit louder.
I kept on flashing back to talking about rules, and it was suburbanization and urbanization in America. And when cars were invented, there were no rules because they were new. People were dying all over the place. There were no rules about how they were built. There were no roads. There was no politeness. There was no morality. There was nothing. There weren't even windshields. So we're thinking about people in life without any knowing. I mean, they come out of the Garden of Eden, if you believe all the stories, and you're repopulating the world. There's more and more. You might not want to. Ellen mentioned going off the grid, be with a lot of people. So you might keep on moving away from people and living your life however you live your life instinctually. But we don't know what other people may be doing. We don't even know if they speak the same language.
Which, if you fast track to the end of this story, right, in the Tower of Babel, right, we see a whole other conversation about the power of speech and unity. Yeah, Shelley.
First of all, it wasn't an apple.
It was a fruit, right? Right.
In the Garden of
Right.
Eden, it was a fig that was taken. A fig tree. It was not an apple. But secondly, going back to originally, God went around to different peoples, and they didn't want anything to do with them. So they would not accept it until God came to the Jewish people, well, to us, and gave us a choice. You either accept me as a God or you're going to be destroyed.
Right.
So we knew that we didn't really have a choice. And once we became, these people became a group, they had to realize that there must be something greater than themselves to have made this, the people, the animals, all the things that are on the earth, because God told us that. And so when Noah was chosen, he was a decent person for the times, but he wasn't such a great guy either.
Yeah.
It's just that he stood out
Right.
among the people. So I think this is a story that's been taken from different parts of history and different stories from other different cultures, and we're so good at that,
Right.
pushing things together and making it us.
Right. Or perhaps, kind of seeing it through a lens which we have agreed, by and large, not exclusively, but by and large, which works for us, right? Which it doesn't mean that it's not problematic or difficult, but that we have agreed as a Jewish community helps us understand how we became a people and how we remain a people who can thrive, right? By looking at stories like these and saying, maybe there are some historical inaccuracies or difficulties. Maybe it's not what I thought. Maybe it is. Maybe it's troubling, right? Maybe I don't like how arbitrary this God is. but maybe I have still what to learn from it by imagining how they were as a people and how they were developing as a people at that time. Maybe, I'm not saying it's 100%, but it's a different opportunity for us to look at this story and to imagine what, for me, what some of the missing dialogue might have been in and amongst Noah's family, between Noah and God as well, and what the zeitgeist must have been like, what the atmosphere must have been like at that time for God to have responded the way God did, and for Noah and the people to have been met with what they were.
And didn't God destroy the first people that he made before the Noah story and start over again?
That's Midrash, right? Midrash. Last one, Arlene, last two, Arlene and...
Maybe God's destruction of people or time.
Just talk a little bit louder.
Maybe God's destruction of a people at a time is to let people know that they're accountable for their morality. They're accountable for who they are. And maybe that's what the story is all about.
Right. Some people actually, who agree with you, say this is a second chance story. This is actually a very positive story for Noah and his descendants, out of whom we come, right? For us to understand what our potential is to do better and to be more faithful, right? Is how many people understand the story, and it's an opportunity, a redemptive moment for us. Yeah.
Two things. First thing is, if we ate from the tree of knowledge, we should have known what was right and wrong.
We should have known not to be naked as well, right, during that story, right?
Okay. And the second thing that I find interesting is I understand Noah being what was considered a righteous man, maybe bringing up his sons as righteous men and saving them. But the sons' wives came from other families.
Right.
There's no mention of the wives, what they were,
right,
whether the sons picked them, or why they didn't even protest that their families
right.
They went.
Where is all that dialogue, right? And if we fast track just a couple of pages in our story, the next scene one of the next scenes that we see with Noah, how many of you remember this? One of his sons comes in, and what's one of the first things that Noah does when he's on once they are safely on earth? He was a guy of the earth, and so what does he do? He plants a vineyard, and he gets drunk. He gets drunk and he gets naked, and his son sees him. And he goes in backwards so as not to embarrass his father, and he covers him up, right? You would think that would be a good thing. When we read the story, we realize it didn't turn out so well for that son, right? He gets cursed, right? So was Noah a righteous man? And that's kind of the comma. It's not that Noah was a righteous man, period. Noah was a righteous man in his generation. There's much to be learned about that as well, right? What doesn't mean that he was perfect, or that we need to be perfect, but that we aspire, it's an aspirational text, right? That we aspire to be as good as we can, right? We say, in a place where there is no ish, we're in a place where there is no human, you strive to be a human, right? Maybe what we learn from Noah is that he was human enough, righteous enough to be saved, right? And to really kind of cast for us the next scenes for us as we go forward. So thank you for a very stimulating conversation. Let's continue on with our bracha at the back of the book. You will see on page 1602, and then we'll continue. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. And we continue as we conclude with the Aleinu. We turn to our concluding prayers, page 586.
Aleinu l'shabbat Adon hakol,
לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשה נגרי הרצון, ולא שם עלינו משפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקי נפגעיהם, וגור עלינו כהון המנן, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ
Bayom ha'hu, bayom ha'hu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo, u'shemo, u'shemo echad.
Let's pause and think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who have died at this season in years past, and those whom we are drawing into our hearts with our own. During the period of Shloshim, these last 30 days, we are remembering Edward Scott Long, brother of Shelley Long, Berta Rubin, temple member, Michael Wexler, father of Kevin Wexler, and Margie Roth, aunt of Nancy Cantor. Today marks a yahrzeit, an anniversary of passing for Isaac Briskin, Ruth Brooks Halpin, Stephen Bradstein, Francis Bullard, Blanche Edison, Saul Fletcher, Nellie Gross, Anthony Cantor, Angela Krull, Eleanor Kushner, Shirley LaGambino, Esther Lando, Nam Lyubichansky, Elaine Marblestone, Ira Morris, Carol Robinson, Ben Seidman, Julius Schrager, Theodore Silverstein, Joseph Spector, Anne Engelman Stanger, and Joy Weaver. If there are names that you would add to either list, names properly spoken aloud by you, please, as I look your way, would you share that name? Zichronam Livracha, may their memories be for a blessing, as we join together for Mourner's Kaddish on page 598. Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shmei Rabbah, Be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'vyomechon u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam olmei almaya, v'yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal Shmei dekudusha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru, Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim alenu be'al kol Yisrael, Amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol tevel v'imru, Amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to all who are mourning, to all Israel, as we join together in saying, Amen. Please be seated. Let's share just a few announcements with you. Please join us for lunch. Thank you for lunch following services. And then tomorrow morning we have adult education, where we'll be looking at Midrash and adult Hebrew as well with Jan. If you haven't had the opportunity to study with Jan, she's wonderful. Don't forget to change your clocks. Right, tonight is a night to change your clocks. We fall back, enjoy that extra hour. It's a pleasure. And also that at 10:45 tomorrow morning, in addition to adult ed and Hebrew and religious school, that we have our community conversation, inclusion of people with mental health conditions and disabilities, offered by our Accessibility and Inclusion Committee at 10:45. Next Friday night, we have a busy lineup. We have the Young Family Service for the youngest ones, kindergartners through third grade at 6 o'clock, followed by dinner. We have Schmoozing Shabbat at 6:45 and Erev Shabbat services at 8 p.m. Saturday morning next week, we have Torah study. I will not be there. My daughter is becoming bat mitzvah. Please join us. And we have services at 10:30 that morning, and please be our guests as well for lunch following that as well. And then Sunday morning, I also won't be there. There will be adult education and Hebrew as well, and the values of Jewish camping at 9:30, another offering, and Hebrew class. To mark on your calendars, on November 13th, we have the Social Action Program Asylum Seekers Follow-Up. That is at 6:30 p.m. Wednesday, November 13th. At the same time, we have the Women's Chavara Art Studio Tour at 7 p.m. That's off-site. And I think in terms of announcements for temple matters, that's what we have for now. We want to offer Mazel Tov to Stuart and Mary Lou Schweid on the marriage of their daughter Megan to Lewis on October 9th. And we want to offer Mazel Tov to Minyan makers, yay you, for your second anniversary, and that you should let other people know, and let Ellen and all of her minions and minion makers, right, to give thanks and support and to join when able. You've built out a wonderful and Hamish and important piece of our community, and we're so grateful, so grateful.
I send out 65 emails every week.
65 emails, amazing.
65 people receive the email.
Yeah. And then the last two things to mention to you, announcement-wise, this Sunday begins the 27th annual JCC Book Festival. 11 days, 19 authors, something for everyone. Wonderful offerings, incredible. Some of our congregants are actually teaching and leading sessions as well, have books of their own. You can find that on the JCC website. It's also linked to our website, and the things that come each year and the quality that we get of speakers and teachers and books in town is quite extraordinary. That goes through November 13th. There's also a bookstore if you're interested for that. And then last, the Levine Center to End Hate you've seen some of the posters, I'm sure, around. They're going to have what looks to be a wonderful and important and compelling panel discussion with Pardeep Kaleka and Arno Michaelis, I think, who share their story of forgiveness after hate in an inspiring community conversation at the Lyric Theater. That's across from where Federation used to be the Christian Reading Room, I think, in that space. You can get tickets for that on that evening, which is November 21st at 7 p.m. And last, any news that we should know from you, any joys, any accomplishments, any oys, any moments that we should know about? Please, Herb.
On Sunday morning at 9:30 in Conference Room C.
This Sunday?
On November 10th.
Yep.
Will be the first meeting of radio sign-up.
Oh, great.
So
Great.
we're still looking for members, and I'm still looking for a lady that I can soar and get in the magic.
Did you hear that last beat?
You need to prove you have health insurance.
He's looking for someone to saw in half. He needs a woman who he can, for his,
I also need
on radio is an important piece that you should know.
I need somebody to help me. My last assistant I used for a disappearing act, and I haven't found a way to bring her back. So if someone knows that would be helpful.
Anything else at all that we should know? Okay, all right. Well, let's join together in Kiddush and give thanks for the sanctity, the beauty of this day.
Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pericha yafeh. Amen. Hi.
And our closing song?
Well, it's such a beautiful Shabbat, so let's sing Mayafeh Hayom. Page 634. 634.
Mayafeh Hayom,
Shabbat Shalom. Mayafeh Hayom, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. We look forward to seeing you in the social. Have a wonderful, beautiful Shabbat today.
Shabbat Shalom.
I'd help out if we could do it.
Are you going to come to the meeting? I sent you an email. You don't, obviously you don't open your emails. November 10th. Here.
Look at all my emails.
I sent it to Pauline. Because your cookie man doesn't seem to get my email.
What's radio sign up?
Radio sign up, we're going to do is we're going to get radio show. The reason we're choosing radio show is that you don't have to memorize it. So basically, part of what we'll do scripts and then drop it on page. So nobody has to memorize it. For my kids, if you really have people actually rehearse on their own. So like, the Cantor Release, will be doing a song. And bringing a song to do during a radio show.
So your content will be a service? A story will be
So how come
a podcast?
you're not volunteering?
But we may make it into a podcast. But, you know, we will. We're not doing it now.
Well, you're planning organizing.
How long will we wait? Oh, it's going to long after 6 weeks.
Well, there's much longer plan.
Yeah, I mean, we probably won't have to. We're going to present it. We'll have a night. You know, we'll set up tables and there'll be wine and cheese, and it'll be a performance.
Oh, I see. This is like a one up.
Right now, it's going to be a one-up. Maybe we'll do it every year, but we have fun with it at this point. We're getting money from next year's and we have some money from the next year. So, you know, we expect to make it a night at the temple.
Interesting idea.
It could be a lot of fun.
It's totally free for it.
Yeah. Right now, I'm thinking of making it you know, variety type. Because then everybody can bring their own actors. So I've been hitting everybody in emails that, you know, I'm going to do radio magic.
Yeah.
So I was looking for somebody to sort, and I said, you need to prove that you have medical licensure.
Yes.
But, you know, there are other things. I mean, you can be a ventriloquist, you know, you can be a dancer. But, you know, the 30s and 40s and 50s, but when they did these shows, they had live audience. So the idea is I'll have a on-the-air sign that goes on and off, and then we'll be able to
applause sign and
we'll be able to get recorded radio commercials, you know, like cigarette commercials, and, you know, Ajax home boom, the home cleanser, you know, those sorts of things. Maybe, you know, we'll sell law bonds. I'm hoping that people will come up, you know, like doing Abbott and Costello, who's on first, or somebody suggested that we get people to play George Burns and Gracie Allen. I think what I originally envisioned is that we would stick to Jewish entertainers. I like them because I can beat them up.
You get really.
Not for long though.
Now, who are the Pittsburgh Mustangs? Is that like a horse? Soccer team. Oh, all right. And you play on that team?
No, my brother does.
Oh, I see. You must practice with them? Is that what you
I remember going through the night for lots of my
One person,
Tori was in high school, sorry, I was
one nuclear bomb.
Well, that's what a lot of people, use it as kind of an Armageddon theory, but we haven't seen that, thank God, since then, so I'm gonna go with the real things. It doesn't end. Yeah.
There's a lot of nuts out
There are a lot of nuts, a lot of fingers all over the place.
It's unbelievable.
But I won't go into it.
What is this, Shabbat Shalom? I love this.
Isn't it beautiful?
Oh, thank you. You know, I got at a second-hand shop in New Mexico.
Did you really?
I'm in Mexico.
Someone gave it up. And, yeah, $10.
Not what your face looks, right?
No,
No, something.
I am gonna stay.
I don't
It's
know
very
what
good.
it is. Yeah,
It almost
thank
looks
you.
Indian to me. Not Indian,
Yeah,
not
from India.
Yeah,
India.
not
Yeah,
It's wonderful.
from India.
Yeah,
From
yes,
India.
yes, yeah.
Thank you.
It's a,
Anyways, Oh, the chickens are.
Oh, yeah.
It's a definite.
Oh, I won't hold you, get the
But she reaches out and
Oh, right.
I can't stand
tried to
the smell.
call
And I just,
Tommy
Oh.
I'd rather get it at my kids.
Oh.
Or I make a kosher for them, you know.
Right.
The chicken, I want the chicken soup.
Right,
And
right.
they do. And I just
Yeah.
don't care.
Are you going up there to see your kids again?
No, I don't know what I'm doing, actually. I wanted to go, I was thinking of going to Heron for Thanksgiving. I was thinking of it. And then I mentioned to Karen, every other year it's about Thanksgiving, and the opposite year it's Michael's in-laws and Karen's in-laws. And I usually go with Rich to his children's house. So I wanted to go to Karen, and I asked her, she said, yeah, fine, good. But then I said, will Joyce, the mother-in-law, be bothered by it? She said, I don't know. And she said, well, I said, does God say anything? She said, yeah, Joyce said she doesn't know what her plans are for Thanksgiving. So my feeling is that I shouldn't go. And I don't really feel like going to Michael, it's too far. It's really, I mean, it's an 8-hour trip.
Yeah. It's true.
So,
Yeah. So, where is, God, I can't think of his name. Where is
Rich.
Mike? No, Rich. Where's Rich going?
he goes to his kid's house, he has a kid here in Rochester.
So, why don't you?
Oh, I do. Yeah.
That's good.
He bought some groceries and